Hello everyone, Paul Elam here with A Voice for Men with Part 3, the conclusion of the plague of modern masculinity. And we'll begin with an old expression. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. You know, they say there's nothing new under the sun. History infers wisdom in those words. We can see with proper discernment that the women's movement was not really a new era for women at all. They simply changed workplaces from inside the home to outside. It is, on close inspection, just women and men practicing their biological strategies in a highly successful manner. So successfully, in fact, that it is rendering large portions of the male population even more expendable. So expendable, in fact, that we are now creating reasons to get rid of them. It was destined to happen once male control of the environment made it safe enough for women to start acquiring power and resources outside the traditional and protected realm of the home. That is why you see feminism with its strongest foothold in industrialized nations founded on the rule of law. And that is why you see that the law itself is now being manipulated away from the idea of justice, which was its intent in a man's world, and toward the funneling of added protection and resources to women, which has been always the intent in the world that was shared by both sexes. It is not the pursuit of equality or the love of egalitarian values that has led to feminist governance, but pure blind human biology practiced in the same way that it was on the plains of Africa a million years ago. And the stunning successes of men making all manner of advances since then has now begun to take us out of the picture. Quite simply, men have worked themselves out of a job. As noted earlier, we have already begun to disappear from the ranks of the employed and the educated, and the government is actually adopting policies to accelerate that process. It doesn't take a conspiracy nut to understand that this will eventually become a disappearance from the planet. In practical terms, there are not near as many men needed proportionally as there once was. The ones that remain will be increasingly of lower status and will be subject to ever more draconian control. But of course, there is one factor that will turn the tide before it's over. It is the instinct for survival. It is the only instinct stronger than that of sex, and it has already begun to show signs of emerging. We call it the men's movement, MRAs, MGTOW, and the like. We are the evidence that men transcending biology is possible, proof that there actually can be something new under the sun. And we are growing rapidly because more and more men are beginning to see misandry for what it is, a loaded gun pointed directly at their heads and at the heads of our sons. Unlike feminism, which is simply a normal functioning part of the female sex role advanced to destructive levels, masculism is the exact polar opposite. This is the first time in human history that men are organizing to overcome their biological mandate and to reverse the flow of survival power back to the world of men. And while our ranks contain many who are misinformed and who in fact unwittingly play into the wrong agendas with support of chivalry and traditionalism, those notions are becoming increasingly unpopular and more commonly attacked on philosophical grounds. The men's movement is starting to get it. And this is precisely the battle we need to fight. Not with women and not with feminists of either sex, but with the aspects of masculinity that are leading to our destruction because they are now outmoded, archaic, and self-defeating. What remains of chivalry is better described as toxic waste in the water supply. And just as we depart from the old definitions of masculinity, we must do the same with chivalry. In fact, it's dependent on it. It may have once been a code of honor used by alphas to control other men, but in the modern world we all know that chivalry has but one meaning: female privilege. And so now we can call it by many more modern and more appropriate names: VAWA, primary aggressor laws, Title IX, rape shield laws, Title 4D, family court, prosecution on false accusations, media bias against men, or, if you prefer the short and simple version, misandry. Now, as previously noted, the men's movement is a unique and literally unprecedented phenomena. It will bring with it some other firsts. One of them is the socio-sexual warrior, and I refer to him for the purpose of this discourse as the Zeta male. The tag remains faithful to the Greek alphabet classification of the other types of men, but there is more purpose to that level. I took it from the star Zeta Persei. I like the navigational metaphor of the star as it is applicable to the context of a lost generation. But I was also intrigued to learn that Persei is a variation of Perseus, the first of the Greek mythological heroes. Perseus had a remarkable talent for slaying archaic monsters, Medusa the Gorgon among them, who as a mortal woman possessed great beauty and was self-enamored and struck with the power of her sexual allure until she was turned into a hideous monster by Athena, who later used her severed head as a weapon on her shield. In 1940, an article by Sigmund Freud was posthumously published entitled Medusa's Head, Das Medusenhaupt, in which he postulated that Medusa represented castration in a child's mind related to discovered and denied maternal sexuality. Even more interesting is that in modern times, feminists, from Women, a Journal of Liberation, 1978, adopted and reinterpreted the image of Medusa as representative of women's rage, and it served as a binding symbol of feminist solidarity. So Perseus, the namesake of Zeta Persei, was the slayer of Oedipal shame or control and the murderously powerful raging feminist archetype, the Zeta male. This classification of male is new because this is a male that until recent times was never needed and indeed was never here. He is emergent and unpolished and struggling to find his legs, but in doing so, thanks to the fertile, safe ground provided by, of all things, other emerging Zetas on the internet, he has no allegiance to tradition, nostalgia for the past, and in fact is charged with plotting a new course. He cannot be shamed into control or intimidated into silence or seduced into capitulation. He doesn't fit in the classic hierarchy and would gladly bring it down in the name of his cause. When someone says he needs to act like a real man, he smiles and says, "No, thank you." He doesn't seek power but justice, and he has one overarching feature largely absent in the world of men around him. He cares about those lost young men who were ambushed coming out of the womb, and he will strive to make himself an example, living proof that there are other roads to take than the ones that lead to self-hatred and self-destruction. And that concludes part 3 of this series. And I do hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.